GT 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? We are on audio here today on episode 380 of The Hodder Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. We've got a really fun episode for you here today. I try to have every single week right here on The Hodder Show. We are sitting down with my buddy, C.M. Peters, who is an author, voice actor, and also one of the co-creators and one of the producers of Baseline Feed, a fantastic audio drama that gives opportunities to the up-and-comers in the narration voice acting world, as well as writers and things of that nature. They are currently in the preseason for their season 3 right now. So we dive in talking all about season 3, about her journey to being a co-creator of a audio drama podcast, as well as her work as an author, of course, a little bit about her work in the radio world, which she did for a very long time, and of course, voice acting. So there's really quite a bit of ground that we cover in this conversation, and I know that you're going to enjoy every second of it. CM is a fantastic guest, and I'm very happy to call her a friend as well. So big shout outs to CM and to Baseline Feed. If you're listening to this and you want to check out Baseline Feed, you definitely should. I actually was featured on Klondike Gold, part 1 and 2, which both are out now, which were 2 of the preseason episodes that they have going right now. So go ahead and check them out. I play a really interesting character for me. And while you're at it, be sure to check out last week's episode of the show, another exclusive first listen here for The Hodder Show, second time ever with the homies in Seagrave, as we got to hear their brand new EP in its entirety 20 days early. So go check it out. And also check out their brand new music video that just came out actually today as you are listening to this, October 11th. Go check out the homies. They definitely deserve your support. And also October 25th, stream the self-titled EP everywhere. Big shouts again to the boys in Seagrave. I appreciate you guys very much for giving me the opportunity to share exclusively your EP. With that, we're ready to roll into my chat with C.M. Peters from Baseline Feed. Let's get into it. We are here with author, voice actor, and co-creator of Baseline Feed, C.M. Peters. CM, what's up? How you doing?
Hi, how you doing? I'm doing great.
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Excited that we were able to link up for this chat because I had you and Tanner on.
Yes.
For what feels like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah,
and
it was
I had Tanner
a year.
on, so
yeah,
it was
a year and somewhat ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it might as well be 10 years ago. It feels like at this point, but that's
I totally agree there.
But with having Tanner on, I mean, I've been talking about having you on to talk about. I mean, we have tons of things to cover, but specifically about your work as an author, as a published author, because we've never really had that conversation before. And the many times we've chatted about different things, it's mostly podcast related stuff. So I've never really dove into that with you before.
Exactly. And I'm here for it. Not just that, podcast stuff too, but yeah, I can talk about my books all day.
Horror stuff, podcast stuff, food, whatever. You know,
oh, yeah.
We usually hit on those things anytime we have a conversation on the old Discord.
We can talk about anything.
Absolutely. But first and foremost, just diving in here, we know that Baseline Feed's coming up with season 3. It's coming.
Yes.
It's coming. So before we dive into more the author type of conversation, how excited are you for season 3?
You have no idea. We are coming up with all new stuff that we've never done before. And we are so excited. We're already working on editing, putting things together. We have surprises for our patrons. We have surprises meant for everyone. We have something, well, I can say it now because the cat's out of the bag, but we have a narrative story this season, which is something we didn't have before. So we'll have the narrative story and an anthology story with each episode. So that's something new we're doing, and I'm so excited about that because that story is a gem.
I can say I don't think I'm breaking any trust by saying that as someone who got to check it out a little bit, the narrative story, I am very excited, and I know everyone's going to love it because it is it is just it's very good.
It's very good. Like, we can tell who wrote it because my interview with him has come out through Baseline Feed. It's written by Arthur Unk, and it's awesome. So we can't wait for people to hear it.
Yes, and I myself personally cannot wait for season 3 because season 2 was incredible, and we're definitely going to discuss that as we move along with our conversation here. But I can't wait. I just wanted to kind of get a little pre-hype going for that because I'm very excited.
And we have this season will be a bit of a darker season, to be honest. We have a lot of suspense, noir, thriller, horror stories than we did the previous years. And we have the stories that are completely out of the park, so different than anything we've ever done. So it's going to be a really fun season.
The fact that when you say that, what comes to mind is like stories from season 2, like Handy, for example, which was without a doubt one of the most interesting, weirdest stories I have ever heard in my entire life. I will never forget that opening line with, I don't even fully remember, but it was something like, something about like my hand left me and broke up with me or something like that. And I was like,
exactly.
What?
Yeah. I played Lefticia in that story. I was the left hand. It was so weird, but I loved it.
A really great story, a really fun.
Yeah.
The whole thing was really fun, but just when you say like more odd, like weird stories, you guys have always had a really cool kind of, it's not just horror, it's not just drama, it's not just comedy or sci-fi. You guys kind of always mix together these different types of stories. For you as an author, is that something that from day one you personally wanted to make sure happened with Baseline Feed?
Completely, because I didn't want to put us up in a cage. I wanted us to have different options and not rely on a particular genre. There are so many different genres out there. The only thing we have agreed on with Tanner that to never touch is erotica, because no. Simply put, no. Can you imagine doing the sound effects for that?
I actually could, and I would die laughing. Put myself up to narrate that, but I'll do it like Gilbert too. Godfrey. And he stroked his penis. Like, yeah, come on, that'd be great. Tanner, listen, we're gonna do Baseline Feed after dark. It's gonna be great.
Baseline Feed. Oh, we need to do that. That must happen. After dark.
Yeah, I will happily put up anything you guys need to make that happen, even for Patreon. That'd be amazing.
We'll have an entirely different type of Patreon. Oh my god,
that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Before we keep going, CM, is there any way your volume is perfect? Actually, hang on, I'm going to pause. That's fantastic. But it's funny, like obviously, aside from erotica, you guys really have had a little bit of everything, which I think is interesting for you as a standpoint of an author, because with your books, you have kind of, you have almost like aside from, I guess, sci-fi with your books that you've actually published, but with stories that you've written for Baseline Feed, with books that you've published, you kind of sort of have a similar thing going. You kind of have stories that touch on a little bit of everything. There's romance, there's sci-fi, there's stuff that's very much kind of horror and creepy. Where did it all start for you with reading and with writing? And what were kind of some books that kind of got you started with that?
Well, reading started so long ago in a galaxy far, far away. Honestly, I started reading, like I knew how to read before I went to school because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I'm the type of kid that was really creative, and I got bored easily because I learned fast. So my mom would just give me a book, read. So I started with, do you remember those little books like Mr. Grumpy or Mrs. Happy with the little cartoonish that
Yeah,
are
okay,
like
yeah.
like round with just legs
Yes,
and
I do.
arms. I started reading with those, but reading like actual books, like novels, I want to say around 10 to 12 years old, because like kids' books bored me. I needed to learn. I still love to learn today, but to escape, for me, it was always an escape. When I read, I want to be taken somewhere else. Um, so that's how it started. And as for writing, that came with writing not technically writing classes in school, but we always had a part of the curriculum in French class, because I'm French, if you didn't notice. In French class, we always had a part where we had to write text comprehension or just creative writing. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is something I love. So I started writing fan fiction in my teenage years without knowing it was fan fiction, because I didn't know anyone who wrote anything like that, because it was a big hush hush thing, because what the hell are you writing, so
When you say fan fiction, I have to ask, is it what everyone's thinking when you say fan fiction, or is it
not
like...
as a teenager, it was not the dirty type.
Okay.
It was just a more romantic-y, like, oh my
Sure.
God, I want to be projected into this story. I wrote, weirdly enough, I didn't know the backstory of The Crow by James O'Barr. I loved the movie with Brandon Lee, but I'd never read the comics. I didn't even know the comics existed. So I'm like, I want to be in that universe. And then it was Don Juan de Marco with Johnny Depp. That was like total the romantic side of me.
Well, I mean, of course.
It's Johnny Depp. Come on. So, and I ended up in college in literature and writing in lit. So I wrote a while in I wrote in French back then. And because of college, I started hating it and I stopped. I took like I think it was 12 years off of writing anything like story-wise. And in 2014, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and the start of it was kind of rough. I'll skip over that because it's not interesting. But what I did, because I stayed home a lot, was write again, and I started writing in English. Again, with the fan fiction, mostly Marvel stuff. And yes, there was dirty stuff.
Ooh. Okay, come on. Who was the main? Who's
Loki,
your main topic?
come on. Loki.
I could see that for you. I could absolutely
Yeah,
get that.
I love Loki. Come on. But Captain America, not that far behind.
That's America's ass.
That's America's ass.
Listen, I'd write erotic fan fiction for Captain America.
Oh, dude. Or Winter Soldier with his bionic arm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So many ideas. and in I want to say 2016, 2017, I started writing original and started writing a novel, and then it never stopped. It stopped recently because I needed to take a creative break. Like, I was getting burned out and I didn't want that. So it led us to short stories because they were simpler, and that led to a podcast.
It's funny how,
long story short,
yeah.
I'm here now.
That's funny how it all kind of comes back to, comes back to the podcast and short story and stuff. And
Yes.
things of that nature. It's funny. Yeah. But just to go back for a second, as far as that, what was that first book that you published? Like, how did that journey go for you as far as with what you have published?
The first book was Pawns. It started as a fan fiction, but I'm like, I did not write 32 something chapters to only have it read by a handful of people, because it was in a fandom that was barely known and still isn't known all that much. So I took out all the fandom elements out of it, reworked it, and put it out. It's taking place in Detroit. It's a woman whose father passes away. He has a pawn shop. And she realized that her dad was hiding a lot of things, made deals with bad people, and she's stuck in the middle with the Irish mob. So that was published, I think, if I remember correctly, in 2017. And that was my first novel. And it's still available if anyone is interested. It's mostly suspense, paranormal, because there's vampires in there somewhere. I've always
Some
been a big
vampires
fan.
thrown in there.
Yeah, I like, if you ask me whatever creature I like the most, vampires is always my answer. I love vampires. I don't know why, but I do.
I think everyone always has their thing. Like I've been realizing more and more lately, I'm a huge, I call it entity horror.
Mm-hmm.
Because anytime there is a story or a movie that there's like a mysterious, terrifying entity that's doing something, I'm like, yo, get the popcorn. Like, where?
Like, do
I'm
you
gonna
mean
enjoy
like
this.
the entity in the TV and Poltergeist, something like that?
Or like, just when I say entity, it's just like a creature or something of
okay.
that nature. Like anything, like for example, like with Smile, that movie that came out last year.
I'm way too much of a wuss to watch that.
Dude, it was. Mwah.
It looked so creepy.
Yeah, it was. It was
Yeah.
terrifying, but like I didn't get scared because I was so excited because I'm like, yo, anytime all my favorite like horror cliches, something that isn't creepy that is, or something that shouldn't be scary that is
Mhm.
scary, which is a smile, you know?
Yes. Oh,
Someone smiling at you shouldn't be creepy or terrifying
yes.
unless they smile a little too long at you. And
They're
then
like
there's
Pennywise smile.
Yes. And like demons and crazy things and suspense and
And tentacles and all that stuff.
Are they just crazy? Are they not crazy?
Mhm.
There's an entity, meaning that's what I call like things that are, it's like, oh, hey, there's this creature that is doing something. Like the Bye Bye Man, which I watched the other night and I actually really enjoyed.
I've never heard of that one.
You know, it's I think it's on I remember where I watched it, but it's the Bye Bye Man, and it's literally like he's a dude, but he's like a paranormal being. And
Okay.
he does stuff.
I'm
If you say
curious
his name,
now.
he's going to show up and
Oh, it's like
stuff.
Candyman and Beetlejuice.
kind of, yeah. It kind of this
Okay.
the similar vein.
Yeah.
But so for me, anytime there's any kind of entity or creature, this unknown thing that's doing stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's so. Everyone has their cliche. Some people like werewolves, and I don't like werewolves personally, but that's just me.
I don't mind. They keep you warm at night.
Exactly, but I'm all in I'm all in for vampires still. I still think there's lots to be had with vampires. Which is it. That's it. And then talking about back to books as well, you do have the Fate book series.
Yes. Yeah. It's still my favorite in my books. You're not supposed to have favorites. Still my favorite. It's and that one is I was going to say it's partly autobiography. Wow, I can't say that word in English.
Autobiography.
Thank you, but it's not.
I got you. Yeah.
But the thing is, I decided it partly takes place in Scotland, and around the time I started writing that book, we found out in my family that we had Scottish roots, and that made me understand why I felt such a connection with that country and those people. So I'm like, okay, I'm setting up my book partly there. So without spoiling anything, it's about a young woman who has things happening around her. Like, she doesn't know if it's supernatural, paranormal, or whatever, but she finds out that her parents are not her parents, that her past is not what she thinks, and that there's a special connection in Scotland and with magic. So I'm trying not to spoil anything, which is very difficult with that book, but there's a mysterious man that follows her around, and she thinks that this man is out to hurt her, but he's actually out there to put everything into light for her to figure out who she really is. So, yes. So that's Bound Fate, and then Sealed Fate is the sequel. And that's all I can say. Because if I say more, I'm going to spoil stuff.
Let's just say and that book those two books are still available too, correct?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
They are. I self-published them. I'm still trying to shop for a bigger publishing house because my dream for this, honestly, I know that it's a really big dream and it's probably not going to happen, but I'd love a movie done with them. Like,
I mean, that'd be pretty
saw,
cool.
you know, like I know you write occasionally. I'm the type of person that when I write, I see what I write like a movie in my head.
Yeah.
Like my characters, I usually cast my characters before I start. And at some point, I don't see them as actors. I see them as who I wrote them out to be. So I still want this book to do better than it has. I still have that dream.
So when you're writing something, it's like you go, okay, this character is Chris Evans, and he's and then this other character who he has a romance thing with is obviously Sam Peters. So so then obviously, you know, you're
why not?
You build it. Hey, you know, oh hey, Chris Evans.
Hi. I know he's engaged, but still, you know, I'll take my chance.
Hey, girl, I'm married. I'd still if Chris Evans walked in here right now, I'd be like,
I wouldn't throw him out of bed.
Exactly. But no, in all seriousness though, like that is a really cool way to write, where you're thinking of these characters, and I do the same thing. Like I'll be okay, this is John, and he's this guy, and who would play him in a movie, or here's who would voice him in a thing or whatever. Like that, I very much do the same thing. So that's interesting.
Yes. It helps a lot with the creativity. And at some point, like I said, I don't need the actors anymore. They've taken a life of their own, but writing the scenery and everything, I'm very visual. So I'll go around, like I don't necessarily base my scenery on real places, but the surroundings. Like if it's New England, in the suburbs or countryside, I'll have a picture as my background, the desktop wallpaper of my laptop, just to be in the area.
Interesting.
Yeah. So okay. I'm very visual and descriptive, but because of my previous job, I rely on sounds a lot as well. So it's a very weird way of creating, but you know, it works for me.
I get it. And I think that's cool, because that's something I've always appreciated about your work, is you are very descriptive. That's something for me that like I get more into a story if, you know, you're talking about more like world building, I guess, if that makes sense. Like it's, you know, what the protagonist is, especially when it comes to, obviously with podcast stuff, you know, audio drama and stuff, you're really, even if it's, I mean, with audio dramas, it's a little different because you're also hearing things if there's sound effects and stuff. But even just from a narrative standpoint, if your protagonist is talking about what they're hearing and what they're seeing and what they're smelling and looking around, like to me, that just draws me in so much as a reader, because I feel like I'm there and I can picture this world that you're creating.
Yeah, and that's my goal as an author, to make you fall into my world. That makes me, like, it's the same when I read a book. I want to feel like I'm in the scene. To be like, if you can manage to do that, you've got me with your book. If you haven't managed that in two or three chapters, bye. Yeah, I'm very picky.
Yeah, I do absolutely get that. I'm the same way, even with short stories, right? Like I'm the same way, where I'm like, listen, if you have 5 paragraphs in this story, and by the second paragraph, there's nothing going on, well,
yeah.
If you don't hook me in that first, I mean, some people are like, if you don't hook me in the first sentence, I'm not reading it. I'm like, that to me, that's a little much. I'm like, let's at least get, if you don't hook me with the title, I'm not reading it. It's like, well, let's let it, you know, give it a chance harsh, at least. Yeah.
But that's why the first sentence is very important. There are rules, but I'm not a rule follower if I don't have to. So I try to, I try to hook people with my first sentence for real. I try to follow that rule, because if you go out with it was a dark and stormy night, you've lost me, because that's a classic, but still you've lost me.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly deletes the most current story I have.
The whole novel.
It was a dark, stormy night. Nope.
Ain't happening.
But I do understand what you're saying, though, for sure. It's sometimes going with the cliche things. That's something that even I have learned from speaking with you on writing.
anytime we've had conversations about it, like, you know, sometimes the more of kind of the rules of, hey, here's how things are supposed to be, but also you can throw the rules out if you want, so long as it makes sense.
Exactly.
You know,
like there are tropes that are very popular, especially among romance books or paranormal books, but you don't have to follow them. And even if you do follow them, I think that you should still be careful of not falling into that pile of cliche that comes with it. And I think that comes with being prepared, doing your research, outlining, but that's the way I work. I know there's what we call plotters and pantsers. I'm not a pantser. I need to have a plan before I start writing. So that helps a lot with not falling into cliches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to avoid the bosom heaving. You know, that's
oh God, or breasted boobily down the stairs. Have you ever heard that one?
I have not, no, but I just know
so
bosom
bad.
heaved from Family Guy. That's
yeah. Oh yes.
And her bosom heaved. But that's it though. But then again, sometimes it's almost like a comfort thing. Like for me, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
like when when it comes to horror and paranormal, I'm not against those kind of, oh, it's so cliche, everyone's done this. Well, there's a reason why everyone's done it, right?
Because it's fun.
It works and it's fun, and just I don't know. I've never been one to take things too seriously, I guess. I just if it's a good story, it's a good story. You know,
just you'll find other ways to push it forward.
Right. I think that it's okay to have, you know, if you're writing and you go, okay, I need something to push this story forward. Okay, I'm going to throw this in there for now. This is a cliche thing or whatever the hell, or maybe this doesn't really make any sense in the overall narrative arc or whatever the hell, but it's like, let's throw this in there for now and then we'll revisit it.
Exactly.
And I think that does work. But talking about bosom heaving and so forth, I have to circle back for a second, because the most recent book that you did put out and publish, which I think was like early this year, was it not? It was in March or May?
April? End of April. Yep.
Like I said, March and May. I was
just in the middle.
I was right around there, but that was I think I affectionately referred to it as the spicy country singer book, but that is Coming Home Again.
Yeah, Coming Home Again. It's a little bit spicy. I've had spicier. I have written erotica, by the way. But I've had spicier books. There's one that was there that's coming back up again eventually. But yeah, it's the story of Hadley. She's a country singer, rising star, and decides to go home to try and make peace with her family. Doesn't go as planned. She reunites with an old flame, hence the spiciness. And there's, at the same time where she's trying to make up with her family, figures out that she has a stalker after her. So it makes it a little adventurous.
It's not just romance or anything. There's more elements in that going on. Yeah, there's drama
there's a
and
plot.
suspense, and holy shit, what a concept! That's been my only issue with romance. I mean, it's like I'm going to sit down and read a romance novel anyway, because it's just not my forte. But I have a lot of respect for. I mean, listen, I don't think I've ever told anyone this before, but at one point in my life, talking of fan fiction, I used to write Legend of Zelda romantic fan fiction back in the day when I was I'm not even being funny. I'm being totally serious. Not like erotica or anything. Because I think I was like 12 or 13. But I wrote stuff that I didn't realize it was like romance until like, I want to say like my mom read one or something one time and was like, this is like,
TJ,
this
what
is
are
like
you doing?
I mean, it's not like I was like, TJ entered the castle. It was like writing fan fiction about the characters, but there was elements of romance, and she was like, you're like a little romance novelist. So that's why I stopped doing it immediately, because I was like, that's lame, man. She was just trying to be supportive. But anyway,
that's not it, Mom. And
I do have a lot of respect for romance, because there is, I mean, listen, I love a good rom-com just like anybody. You know what I'm saying? I'm a big sucker for it. I really am. So I'm not against romance novels or anything in any stretch of the imagination.
It's hard, honestly. writing romance is harder to write than supernatural, paranormal, call it whatever, like sci-fi or fantasy. To me, romance is a lot harder because you have elements of relationships that you have to deal with, and you want to stay realistic. Even if you're in a fantasy world, when you're adding a touch of romance, it's still a relationship between 2 or 3 or 20 people, whatever you like,
20 people?
20 people, whatever you like.
No, I know what you're saying for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the elements that are there, like in romance, sometimes it's not like I'm known for my angstiness in my books when it comes to love. So, and it's not always easy because I put myself in my character's shoes, and sometimes it's like I feel tortured inside for them, but it works because that's what I want to put out in the book. So trying to put yourself in those shoes, but at the same time, I'm still single. So just a message out there, So
listen, if you what was that show called? Oh gosh, Bachelor. What was like Bachelor number 1? If you want to,
oh my God, yes. I don't know what it was called in English, but in French it was called something like Love at First Sight. Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was like,
yeah, oh God.
It was like Bachelor number 3. If I was an ice cream cone, how would you eat me? It's like just shit like that. Like, well, I would actually dip you in some whipped cream, and it's like, what the fuck?
I'm a little uncomfortable. Oh my God!
I have succeeded in my goal here today.
We need to do an episode of the Hodder Show as Love at First Sight. Let's find bachelors for CM.
If you don't think that I will set that up,
I'm sure you mistaken. would. That would be hilarious. I would totally do it.
And I mean, it really wouldn't actually be. We'll talk later. That's actually a fantastic idea. I'm totally.
We'll brainstorm. We'll brainstorm.
I am totally in to do that. that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But with kind of as we move on into kind of talking more podcast stuff, the one book I wanted to make sure I bring up, because it's kind of interesting how all this connects, because Hillside House, which is one of my favorite pieces that you've written. Now I call it piece because it's a book, but then also it was an episode, well, 2 episodes, I guess you guys did do for Baseline Feed. But Hillside House is such an interesting story, and I think one reason why I love it so much is because of what happens near the end, which I don't want to spoil it, but that really, for me, I want to say it wasn't the first thing of yours that I got to experience. I know there's been stuff before that, but that was really like, I was like, holy shit, this is fantastic. Like, I really love that story.
Nice. That story came first as, I think it can be qualified as novelette. It's not quite a novella. It was really thin. And it was inspired by a movie. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Winchester with Dame Helen Mirren. It's based on.
I don't think I have. No.
The lady who inherited the Winchester Rifle Company from her husband, and it's actually a true story. She inherited the company, but she also, it was said, to see ghosts of the people that died because of Winchester Rifle. And every time she would see one of those ghosts, she would create a new room in her house to imprison them. And she had so many rooms and doors that led nowhere in her house. They made a movie, I want to say about 5 to 6 years ago.
2018 supernatural horror film,
yes.
Winchester, the house that ghosts built, or just Winchester.
Yes, and that house is in California. I know people who visited. I've never been, and I would not go because I'm a wuss. And I watched that movie like halfway hidden behind my phone because I'm a scaredy cat, and there's a lot of jump scares in that movie, but I love the idea of haunted houses. I worked on an island that was partly haunted in my youth, because I'm so old. We can talk about that later. But
in my ute.
In my ute. So I watched that movie. I'm like, ooh, haunted house. Ooh, haunted manor. Ooh, creepy. I could write something like that. And it just came out within a few days. Like this guy coming home because his parents have passed and he needs to find his sister. She's missing. And he has a lot of history with the house and memories and things that happened there, and realizes that the house is haunted. So at first it was a novelette, and then Tanner read the story and he's like, yeah, we're doing this.
I can see why. Like just again, like when I listen to a podcast or whatever that has a story, as much as yes, the sound design and the music and everything is a huge part of it. For me, you can dress up a story as much as you want. If it's not a good story, it does not matter how well it's produced or how fantastic the narrator does. It doesn't matter. If it's not a good story, it's not a good story. And for me, I was really pulled in by that, and I was like, I need to listen to part 2 immediately. I was like, I need to know what happens.
You could not.
Yeah. Oh, that was suspenseful. I didn't like it. But I get it.
I was flattered that Tanner wanted to do it, but at the same time I told him, like, this is my baby. This was not written to be a podcast, so we better make it good. And he's like, trust me, it's going to be good. And dude, was I not disappointed?
He was right.
Yeah. Oh, he was absolutely right. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do the music. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah.
No,
well,
I was going to say
it was on point.
Because I usually, not all the episodes, but usually I do the music, like the musical arrangements. And I got to do them for that because he wanted me to put music to my words, like knowing what the atmosphere was. So, and I really appreciated that. So,
which that's something that's so cool about with what you guys are doing. You all kind of like, you all take on a producer role and you all do different productions for different episodes. And I know you do tons of different stuff as well as Tanner and everyone else. But I think it's really interesting for certain stories especially when it's your own story, when you can do those musical arrangements where you're finding these pieces of music that just, you know, the story, you know how it should sound, you know, like we were talking about earlier, you're visualizing things as you're writing. So it's so interesting to then listen with that music and know, okay, this is what was kind of going through your mind, I guess, at the time with, you know, as you were writing it.
Exactly. Like, you know, that you want to build fear in this area, or you want it to be a little more comical, something like, you know, your story. Like I was saying earlier that I see my stories as movies. I don't necessarily hear the music with it, but I know how I want the atmosphere to be. And music is a big part of atmosphere for me. So getting to choose the music that plays along my story is usually important for me. So that's why I did it for Hillside House. I did it for Cargo in the first season as well. And second season was Liam. And Liam was fun to do.
I loved Liam. I think that I did, like, I thought Cargo was really cool because it's a kind of like a more of like a sci-fi type story. It's just, again, personal taste. Not necessarily my forte with sci-fi, but that's just when it comes to the podcast world anyway. I don't know why. It just is what it is.
Fine.
But it's still a great story and it was still a lot of fun and the music for it was fantastic. But for me, Liam was like, you guys came out of the gate swinging with season 2 with Liam. I was like, yo, after those bonus episodes you guys did heading into season 2 with
Tales
from the Old Man.
Tales from the Old Man.
Yes, which was so well done, and I think it was such a wonderful look into what you guys were going to do. But then to come out of the gates with Liam, which was not only a terrifying story, but it was so well done from a production standpoint, narrative standpoint, music standpoint. It was spot on. But I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that there was a little bit of real life influence on that story for you, right?
Oh yes, because when I was in college, when I just started college, I started working on what's called in Quebec the quarantine island. It's Gros Île in French. It's where during the famine in the 1840s, the Irish came through on boats, and they had to stop, be quarantined to not bring illnesses into the province. And there's between 5,000 and 7,000 people laid to rest on that island. I fully believe that it's haunted. And the doctor's house was a house that we couldn't visit back then because it hadn't been renovated. But, rules are made to be broken. So at night, we'd sneak into it with flashlights. And there were like rat carcasses and crappy stuff. And Liam did not have that name. He really did exist. Probably not as a ghost, but the person really did exist. He was a little boy that was adopted by the doctor and his wife because he lost his family. But people kept saying, "Oh, you'll see him in the doctor's house." I have not, but I know some people who have said to have seen him. So I'm like, okay, so what is he doing there? And then came Liam. He wants to play. That's what he wants. He wants to play.
It just, it was.
That's all I'm going to say about that. And just to close on this story, I worked there for 1 week and I left because I was so creeped out by the whole island and the fact that there were so many people in the ground. I'm like, no, this is not for me. I'm way too much of a wuss to live here week in and week out.
Just bad
because you live on
mojo.
Yeah, because when you work there, you have to live there because it's only reachable by ferry. And if it's raining outside, there is no ferry.
Yeah, so you have to.
You're
yeah,
stuck.
that would creep me out every day.
Yeah. So
I'd be just walking
I
around
left.
like,
I begged for my old job back and left.
I mean, I get it though, but it led to a really fun, interesting story. And one thing that I thought was so cool was the fact that actually wasn't that one of the first stories to feature Bailey? Was that one of the first ones that Bailey was on?
Yes.
I want to say it was.
Bailey being awesome. Tanner's daughter, and she was so great. The child of meat. We'll talk about her later.
Oh, we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that because that was one of my favorite. You know what? Screw it. Let's just talk about it now. We'll go back.
Sure. Yeah.
Listen, I loved season 2. I thought season 2 was fantastic. I thought you guys did so many things well. I thought that the stories were so diverse and interesting. Selfishly, there's a couple stories I really enjoyed, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah. But Life's a Park and Then You Die is without a doubt my favorite episode from the season. And it's my favorite episode that you have done to date just because of the way you played that character, whose name I am drawing a blank on right now, I thought was just it was just incredible.
Well, thank you. I must say it wasn't supposed to be me from the start playing that character, but something happened. I don't remember what, and it ended up being me, which, I'm good with. But it's a very, very peculiar story. Jason Porras, hats off to you because that's the author of that story. I'll admit when I first read it, I'm like, what am I reading? What's going on?
Yeah, right.
And when I actually read it, took the time, I'm sitting down with this, I will understand this, and you figure out what he meant with that story, I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this. And, this happened, and then we had Bailey doing voices for us. So I was really glad to be on board with her as well for this story.
Child of Meat is one of my favorite characters in the history of Baseline Feed, for sure. Because just the performance that Bailey did for that story. And I know Tanner well enough to know how he would be producing her while she was doing that.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like, yeah. If you guys haven't heard Life's a Park and Then You Die, you should. Yes. Because I mean, CM Peters as you, which is you are the person who's experiencing
there's no
this.
I was looking for the name, but there's no name. It's you.
It's just you.
Yep.
Bailey Wood as Child. I mean, everyone in the story did an incredible job. But then also I have to give a shout out to Katie Tatry as a damn scary clown, because that was, it was a what did I say? I said it was like a provocatively terrifying clown.
She is amazing. With
incredible.
Those voices. Yeah, she is.
Yeah, Life's a Park and Then You Die was just. I think it was the best way you guys could have ended off the season. I really do.
Oh, it was a
incredible.
Blast. Yes, it was.
It was incredible. But going back, Scary Corp was. I want to say that's probably everyone's favorite episode of the season from what I've been hearing. Scary Corp was such a fun episode, written by Arthur Unk and
Tori Miller.
Tori Miller. Yes, thank you. I know Tori by several other names, so I'm like, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
What's Tori's name today? I can't keep up. But that story was so fun. Eric did an incredible job as the kind of the main, and then Tanner did an incredible job as the
Griffin Utley.
Yes, it's Griffin Utley. But my favorite part of the whole freaking story was you voicing the computer.
Morgan is a bitch. Noted. Morgan is a bitch. I loved saying that. You have no idea.
And there was a line that like it was like you were saying something in response to what Tanner's character said. Oh my goodness. I can't remember. There was like something you said. It was like you were like being a snarky. You were like being a snarky bitch back to him. Yep. Oh, it was just if I was going to have a computer that was going to like help me with this crazy thing that happens in the story. Again, folks, I don't want to spoil anything too much because like the season, it's not like it's 10 years ago or anything. You got to go check out the whole season. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But just you voicing the computer, it was a role that. It kind of surprised me because I was just like, oh my gosh, like she's playing this role. Like, this is fantastic. Oh my gosh, like this is great. Like I just thought it was incredible. So
I had a lot of fun doing that because like we can say it now, but we could have said it anyway. I used to do radio. That's what I did for my job. I don't anymore, but using my voice to make people get out of their own headspace and to their imagination is so fun. And doing a computer voice to me is so funny because you hear really bad computer voices every single day. And I'm like, we could do so much better. And then you have Morgan is a bitch.
Well, and I think that's one thing that I loved about it so much was because I knew that, I know your background in radio and everything. So like, I was like, that's just a promo voice. Like it was a promo voice turned up to like 20. It was like a little more robotic, obviously, but like I was like, she's just doing promo voices. Like this is great.
It wasn't big of an effort.
Well, it came off that it was because it was. I remember I was at work, literally like cleaning the one area, and there was all these people around me, and I just was belly laughing. And they're all looking at me, and I'm like, you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it.
You had to be there.
You had to be there. Oh, man. And that was what was so fun about this season. You guys had so much diversity going on. And obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up episode 4 of season 2, which was Widow's Walk.
Yeah.
Which was
you were my husband.
I was, yes. And I think we had a lot of fun.
Oh, it was a nice story.
Yeah, it really was. I thought it was great. It was a touch of dare I say, like paranormal romance almost kind of in moments, I guess.
Drama,
maybe
paranormal.
Not.
Yeah.
Drama, paranormal touch. Yep. Yeah. And that was what was so funny about that. And I know like we've had this conversation. I've had this conversation with Tanner too. That was probably the last role I would have cast myself in which is why it was so much fun, because I was like, really? Like, this is the role I'm going to be. And what I mean by that is I'm like, oh, I can't act. I can't do that.
Yeah, you can.
And Tanner was like, you are literally Aaron embodied. He was like, just be you. And it's going to be awesome.
He was totally right.
Yeah. And I was so like, I remember being just terrified, because I was like, okay, listen, I'm going to toot your horn for a second. Cause I'm like, listen, CM is my whatever the term is on this. I need to make sure that I bring my A game as much as I can, because if not, it's going to sound really weird. If it's like, it's, you have obviously, you've been using your voice to, like you were saying earlier, using your voice to take people away and get them lost in whatever you're doing for however many years. And yes, I've been doing podcasts and stuff for 7 years, but like, as far as using my voice as the only vehicle to do that, in which telling a story, that's something I'd only really been doing for a very short amount of time.
It's very different. It's very different. Like voice acting and podcasting is different, because you host a show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what we're doing. So it's your voice. It's how you speak. It's your demeanor. But when you act, you act. And I don't have an actress background. I did some theater back in college, but that's not the same thing, But because of commercials at my old job, I had to develop that part, because sometimes you have to play the happy little couple or the depressed homeowner or whatever. So I got to practice that. And that's one thing we want to do at Baseline, is when we give a chance to a new voice actor or voice actress, we cast them in very different roles so they can touch a little bit of everything and see, oh, I really like doing this. I want to do this again. So, and we saw you for Aaron. I'm like, oh yeah, because I've never seen you with your wife, but I could imagine that is a way you would speak to her. So I'm like, yeah.
And you guys were right. Like, you were very right. And that's what my one friend, who he listened to it, and he called me and he was like, was that role written for you? Because he's like, aside from one line that I said that he said made him laugh, because he says there's no way you would ever say that, which is the retail therapy line, which he's like, you would never say that ever. Let's go bargain hunting or whatever I say. He's like, you would never say that. But again, it's called acting. But like, he was just like, this character was like, it was so much, it was just like you were talking to Sam basically. And that's how, because I think I ended up redoing that story probably 3 or 4 times. Then finally I was like, all right, I'm going to pretend that
this my wife.
This is literally my wife. And I'm going to talk to her how I'm going to give responses as if she was the one saying these things back to me. So,
and that totally worked.
And turning it up a little bit, obviously, like, some of the stuff I may not be as softly spoken as in some parts, or I would be, who knows, but that's what was so fun about it. And like I said, like when I'll never forget when I got that and I was like, really? Like this? Like, oh, okay. And like, I read the story and I was like, yo, this is terrifying. Like, what the, like, at least with episode 5, it was like, I'm just playing this silly little thing where I could do a silly voice. And like, so it's fine. It worked. But Widow's Walk it's one of my favorite things I've done. And it will probably be one of my favorite things I've ever done for the foreseeable future.
Hello?
Because it was so out of my
TJ,
comfort zone.
You.
But that's what was so fun about it, right? Was like, I was so out of my element. And I remember just being terrified because you're not going to cast yourself in a role that you're not comfortable in, right? You're going to be like, I need to be this person, or I need to be. And at that point, all I'd really done was hosting a podcast and then a little bit of horror narration. So I was like, I can't, this is just me. That's not interesting, you know?
Exactly.
But that's also what's so cool about season 3 is there's a couple of roles that I was very fortunate to be cast in that I was even more terrified, because I was like, I really have to act now. Holy shit. So I'm really excited for everyone to hear season 3, because there is just,
it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great.
Just to talk about casting, like the difference for you and me is like, I get to, Tanner and I and our team get to cast you and stuff. But sometimes we say, hey, I want to play that character. But since it's 5 of us that decide who plays who, and of course, the person that we want to cast, if they say yes or no, sometimes we end up like, okay, so who's going to play this one? I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not me, but that's the kid. Yeah. That's part of it. And that's the whole goal, to get out of your comfort zone and do something new.
And that's what's so fun about it is, there was so much growth with season 2, and there was so much really fun, interesting things that happened with season 2. And something very cool and last minute that actually happened that I wanted to make sure I brought up. Yeah. I technically... I'm not even going to say I submitted a story, because I kind of just messaged Tanner and was like, we should do this. And he was like, Halloween is like, I think it was like 2 weeks away at this point.
Oh yeah.
I was like, no, man, we can do it. We can do it. And that was the crossover with the Harder Show, Baseline Feed, and the Dread Files, which was a Cold Wind Blows on Halloween night, which was obviously a Halloween story. And what was so fun about that, and the reason why I want to bring it up, was obviously your performance in it was fantastic. But
thank you.
What I really, really appreciated about your contribution to this, aside from your voice, was the freaking music that you selected for it. Because holy shit, I literally like what was so cool about that was, obviously I sent the story, I sent my lines in, I did some line editing and stuff. And then I sent it to Tanner, and I was like, you guys just do your thing. I fully trust you. Send me the finished product. We'll put it up. And when I heard that first little bit of music, I remember like I got full on goosebumps. I was like,
oh, nice.
Oh my, it was so perfectly suited for that story and the overall vibe that story had. It was just like, I know that you do that, and that you do a lot of musical arrangements and things of that nature, as well as in your prior career, you did things like that. But that was just like that. And then also the music for Widow's Walk. Like, it was just
Widow's Walk, Chef's Kiss. Widow's Walk, I fully produced myself, like from start to finish, like dialogue and music.
Right.
But your story, I was like, when Tanner sent it to me, I was like, what do you want me to do with this? This is your project with TJ. He's like, yeah, but we need your help. I'm like, okay. So I listened to the whole thing. I have like 3 days
to do this. Please help me.
Well, it doesn't take me long. What I usually do, my process is I'll listen to the whole story and make notes. Okay, this needs, around this time, it needs something more dramatic, something like just underlying with the sound effects, doesn't need that much. So I take notes of what it should sound like. I don't know like what the instruments will be. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it just comes easier when you've listened to it all, instead of just listening to a little bit and then, oh crap, no, this one fits better, and going back and forth. So having to listen to it all and then doing it as a whole is much easier for me. And it's fun to do.
So you're kind of, it's really just finding the mood for what you're doing. Like, that's awesome.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I was curious. I was going to ask you that. How do you go about that process? Because I find for me, trying to select music for things, it's like, I find that a lot of times I struggle with it, because I'm just like, oh, here's this piece of music I think is awesome. then I'll put it underneath something and I go, oh, this doesn't work at all. Like it's just, then, or I think it's going to work and then it doesn't. I guess that just comes with time too, right? You kind of,
it does. Like I've been doing this, like I did that for 21 years. So yes, it comes with experience, but also call me, when you're stuck, just call me. I can help.
I need your help. Please help me.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm curled up in a ball crying.
I'm curled up in a ball trying to. There was one thing, I'm not going to lie to you. There's a project that I haven't announced it yet, but I've been slowly kind of hyping it. Something I've been working on, and there was one episode in particular. I was like hours away from just being like, please help me. Because I was just, and then it just at the final hour, so to speak, I found exactly what I was looking for. And I was like, okay, cool. But I was like, I need CM's help on this because I was like,
anytime.
I got nothing.
I'm always here. If I can help, if I have the time and the inspiration, I'm here.
Exactly. And that's what's so fun about with what you guys are doing with Baseline Feed. You're helping creators who are new to the game, who just need a shot. And it's something that's so, and you guys are willing to not only kind of take a chance sometimes too, right? Like you're saying to these people who maybe they don't have any experience doing anything. At the very least, at least I knew how to record my voice. So like, I guess I had that going for me, but like there are people who I've seen it happen firsthand where you guys are taking someone who has had an interest in this. They don't have any microphones. They have no idea what they're doing. And you coach them through it. You say, here's what we need from you. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you should do. Here's how this would be. But something that I think is so brilliant about you guys with your ability to coach people is you can say, okay, well, here's what we're picturing for this. Here's maybe how you should approach this. But then if someone does it differently and it works, you're still going to be like, that's awesome. Exactly. How do you, as a voice actor and also as a producer of voice actors, let's be honest, how do you find that mindset for the role? How do you dive into it, like say for a character, say like for even for Widow's Walk as an example, where you have to really be in a specific mindset. It's not like you can sit down and do a read of this really dark, dramatic story and 5 minutes beforehand be sitting around laughing and having a good time. Maybe you can. I don't know. I know I can't. I know I have to be very much in that mindset when I sit down. I wish I could turn it on and off. I just can't. I need to be in that mindset. But how do you kind of approach roles like that?
I actually can turn it on and off. I'm the kind of person that is able to, because I used to record my stuff up to season 3. I used to record my lines in a radio studio. There's no atmosphere in a radio studio.
Right.
You have computers, you have CDs, and that's about it, So you have to create your own atmosphere in your head and be in your own bubble. So that's what I would do. I'd sit down, read through the story once, and try to imagine how the person, I don't even remember the name of the character right now, but how she felt at that moment, like being scared of in her own house of things that might happen to her baby. And then, we're going shopping. It's much better. I'll feel much better. And imagine how I would feel if that happened. I try to put myself in people's shoes. So that's how I manage to usually get into a role or imagine myself where they are as to atmosphere. So that's usually what I do.
And you find the same thing with writing, where if you're writing maybe a particularly dark story, I know you mentioned earlier about how you like to kind of visualize things a lot. Do you find that if you're writing something that's maybe particularly dark or terrifying or something, do you find you can kind of turn that on and off too?
Yeah, I do. I try, like I'm writing something right now that is, how can I put this? Someone said the exact word to me the other day, like not therapy, but like closure on something in my own life and that would help me with it. I really can't remember the word right now for it.
Is it cathartic?
It's
Catharsis,
not. That's not.
Maybe
it's not the word I'm looking for, but it's totally that. It's totally that. Like, it's writing this will be catharsis for me. Like, putting the final period to part of my own story. So I put myself for that. Yes, I will put myself in my old shoes, but for other stories where I haven't lived, like you haven't lived through everything. You don't know vampires. You don't know witches. So it's hard to put yourself in those shoes, you know? But I can imagine how maybe I would react if I found out, let's say, that I'm over 2,000 years old, but I've lived through so many lives. Okay, crap. What happened? Why am I still here? So I try to imagine. Why is my back
suddenly really sore? Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Why is my skin so dry? That kind of thing. So I try to put myself in those shoes. Like a friend of mine, because I'm sure you have had imposter syndrome at some point in your life. It's a sickness, really. But that's what she said to me. Like, you've never met vampires. Nobody has ever met vampires. Nobody knows how they are. So write them the way you think they could be. And that's what I do. Even with like romance stories or realistic contemporary stuff. Imagine what you would react to. How would you feel? And I write all at once. I dump everything and then I edit after. If it doesn't make sense, I can correct it. But that's how I usually construct my stories.
Do you have any advice for any new writers out there who are really trying to build their stories in their world, but they're getting sidetracked maybe with they're in their own head about it, or they're worrying about, you know, and like you mentioned imposter syndrome, that's something that's huge and something I actually talk about a lot on the show. And, you know, do you have any advice for people who might be kind of in that mindset right now?
I would say it's good to look up to someone. Like, one of my favorites, like historical novelist is Diana Gabaldon. She wrote the Outlander series, if that rings a bell. It's good to look up to someone, but don't compare yourself because you haven't published anything out there. You're a writer because you write. Or an author because you write, whatever. Author, writer, I know there's a tiny difference, but to me, it's the same thing. Like, and my other piece of advice would be research. And I don't mean necessarily research as in be as accurate as you can be, because you can always edit later and be more accurate, but research will help you world build a lot more. And take example like Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. He spent years researching. You don't have to spend years researching something. You can create your own world, your own rules. Like I have somewhere, I know I have a document because I gave a masterclass on writing recently. And if anyone is interested, I can send it to them. You can put my email address somewhere in the credits of this interview. Like the belief in yourself, like I know imposter syndrome is a thing. I've had it. But the part of believing in yourself, I can do this, is a big thing. And I know it sounds like nothing right now. And sometimes the blank page syndrome is also big. I've had that happen to me. And it's unfortunate, but for that, I have no advice because everything I've tried for myself hasn't worked except a good mental break. Like sometimes you have to just put it aside and do something else because pushing it will make you want to stop. So it's a long piece of advice all wrapped into one is like believing in your talent because you have a story to tell. Nobody else can say it because it's your story.
I think that is a beautiful bow on that, to be honest. Just no one can tell your story but you. Yeah. I always stress to people, you know, you got into doing things because it was fun. Yeah. Just don't worry about, so many people get caught up, especially in the Reddit world, which is more why I live with my writing. So many people will get caught up on, I will never forget, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this. I remember I put up this story And I was really proud of this story. And it was still to this day is one of my most popular stories. Tons of people have narrated it. It was a really fun story.
Cool.
But this one person, they commented, and the only thing they had to say about the story was, "Hey, you write your dates wrong." And I said, "Excuse me?" They said, "Well, you're writing your dates like, so it was the old, 1/27/13 or whatever the hell it was."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, no, it's supposed to be this way." And then they did it backwards.
Yeah.
And I went,
"There's a reason we write them like that."
And I remember just looking at this and just staring at this for a good 5 to 10 minutes. Cause I was like, okay, is this story so bad that the only takeaway this person could make was, well, your dates are written wrong. And I remember in that moment, I was cause that was the first comment I got, by the way, on that story. I was so just gutted and defeated. Because I was like, that's the only takeaway from this story. Like, holy shit. Like, wow. Okay. And then, as it progressed, I had some really nice things. So that was fun. But my point of this story is, in that moment, it was like, oh, well, I suck. This sucks. Like, negative feedback can be hard. But in that moment, what I remember saying to myself, like, well, no. Just because this person, apparently the only takeaway was that, like, I love this story and I'm proud of this story. And this is a story I've been wanting to write for a long time. So it's important to do things for the love of it and do things because you're proud of it. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. As long as you are happy with it and you're proud of it and you got your story out, I think that's the most important thing.
I completely agree, because negative comments can affect an author, especially a young budding one. It can stop you in your tracks. But there's a difference also between negative comments and constructive criticism. If you have a good reason to negatively comment on my story, but you explain to me like, hey, this should be done like this, maybe you should try this, you have to remain open to different comments, because it's not always going to be rainbows and roses. Of course there's people that are not going to like your style or your characters or the way you write. It happens. We all don't like the same things. But I don't like the way you write your dates. Like, seriously? And there's a reason you write the dates the way you write them, because we got them from the British system. We're Canadian. And that person was probably American.
Yeah. That's what it was. They were like, well, that's not. And I remember someone commenting back saying like, are you an idiot? Like, what is like, they were so, it was one of my regular readers. I remember they like, and also that's all you have to say about this story is you write your date. There was if there was any other criticism in there, anything at all. I don't like this character. The character was a piece of shit. So like, I don't like this character. I don't like this. I don't like that. It's like, nope, just dates. And I remember like, and it was really cool that someone kind of came to my aid, but I remember just thinking like, really? That's it?
Seriously?
That's the only thing you have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
It just made me think of that when you said that. But I think one thing that I think is always great and I always appreciate about you is anytime one particular story that I sent you, because I wanted to get your feedback on and some editing, the giving some constructive advice. I wouldn't even call it criticism, but constructive advice from someone like yourself who has been doing this as long as you have and who is also very willing to give that advice, because there are some people out there who, they don't, or maybe they don't package the, what I'm trying to say here. They don't package that constructive criticism in quite a nice way, I guess is the best way to say it. There are some people that just, have
no way to speak.
Right. But that's something I've always appreciated about you is, you're like, hey, here's maybe what I would do, or here's an example of something, or, I think that's so important to still have that, especially for people like me who are, we're just figuring things out.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I've had good mentors writing wise. I could name names. I'm not sure. I'd have to send them the interview so that they would know, but they know because I've thanked them in my books. But I've had good teachers because just the difference of writing from French to English, the punctuation is different. It's very different. So when I started out, that's all the criticism I got. Hey, you write your punctuation wrong. Okay, but what am I doing wrong? And someone finally came out and said, hey, write to me in private. I'll explain to you what you're doing wrong so you can do it right. And we're still friends to this day. She became my mentor because she taught me how to write my punctuation, syntax, grammar properly in English. And now I can edit others like you and help you. So I'm just passing on the knowledge.
And it's so important to do that. And with what you guys are doing at Baseline Feed, you aren't just working with voice actors, you're also working with the writers. If you're a new writer and you want to submit a story, and maybe it's a great story, but there's a few things that need to be worked on, you guys are willing to work with these people. And
totally.
It's something that is so admirable. And I respect you guys so much for doing it, because there isn't really, as far as from what I see, there's no one out there really doing what you guys are doing at Baseline Feed. And it's so
honestly
exciting.
And I'm not saying that to pat us on the back, but there's not a lot, because they want professional all the time. Well, you can't start out as a professional. You have to, learn your craft.
And also, just from a fan standpoint, sometimes professional people are too professional.
Yep.
That's what I was going to say. But it's just, especially in the auto job, it's like, okay, listen, I know you are a world-class voice actor, but like, just, can you sound like you're a real person for 5 seconds for me, please? Like,
because you're not TJ. You're not TJ Hodder all the time.
Yeah, it's just, if everything you narrate is like this, and then the man was able to, it's like, come on.
It's not FM radio all the time.
I call it the radio voice, right? Like there's, there's CM radio voice, and then there's, and you can turn it on and off if you need to, but you understand that, okay, if you're certain things, it's just, to me, I'm like, what I'm trying to say here, folks, is like, something like with what Baseline Feed is doing is important, because there's a lot of people out there who they don't have the credentials to say, get on a podcast or be casted in something, because they don't have any experience. So they can say, hey, yes, I was involved with X, Y, and Z episodes with Baseline Feed. They go, like, what's this? And then they check it out to see your work. It's well produced. It sounds fantastic. The music's great. It's structured really well. Like, you guys are able to present these voice actors and these writers in a way that it's going to help everybody involved, but specifically these people who, like, it's a vehicle for them. I mean, selfishly speaking, it's a vehicle for me. I'm not going to lie. Like, when I can say, yes, I'm proud to be like, yes, I am involved with these episodes here, and I know they're going to sound great. It's going to look really good credit wise on something, because when someone checks it out, it's not like, oh, like, this podcast sounds like shit. They might be a good voice actor, but the production's terrible. The sound design's terrible. The music's really lame. Like, just, I can't stress enough how important it is for what you guys are doing. And, I can speak for myself when I say I appreciate you guys very much, and
so do we.
All of your guidance and also your friendship. Let's just be honest. That's,
that's
the most important thing.
That usually ends up coming along with it,
Right, for sure. But as far as, just to kind of put a bow on this here for today, for you personally, what do you see the future of Baseline Feed being like? What's your immediate goal with it?
I want to see it growing, not in the sense of more episodes, but I want to help like you were just saying, I want to help people get out there, because somebody gave me a chance as an author for short stories. Then I got a bigger and bigger, and then I got a publishing deal. And because someone believed in me, and that's what we want to do. We want to find people that need just a little nudge to get out there as a writer, and as sometimes maybe a producer. If someone wants to produce an episode for us, we're always ready to give you a try. And it's the same thing for voice actors. You're interested? We have monologues for you, dramatic and comedic. And we send them out to you. You send them back to us recorded. Okay, maybe not for season 3 because we're already cast and have started production, but for season 4 and 5 and 6, and like we're at a pace right now where we don't see the end, which is awesome. We're fully invested in this year round. Like, sure, this summer we took a bit of a longer break than we intended to, but it's summer. But we see this continuing, but our main goal remains the same. People that are not well known, that want to get out there, this is your springboard to it.
And I think that's just very cool that you guys are doing that. And I was trying to think of some really fancy word to say, but I was like, nah, I got nothing. But I think it's so exciting. I remember you guys talking about this back in the day before Baseline Feed was a reality, wanting to do this. And it's just, I'm so excited to continue to watch your guys' journey and then also be a part of it in the small way that I can be, because it's awesome to see. And I cannot wait for season 3. If you are listening to this, guys, which obviously you are, go. I don't know why I said that. If you guys are listening to this, well, clearly you are.
We're not. Mute.
I'm leaving that in because I like to make fun of myself sometimes. In the description of this podcast, I will have links to Baseline Feed and their Patreon. Go check it out. Go check out the Patreon because season 3 is coming. When can we expect season 3, CM?
Last week of October. We always for whatever reason, we like to start around Halloween. But there are special things coming before that, like out of season stuff. I'm working on it. And I'm not.
I'm working on it.
It's like, I don't want to push the voice actors that are listening to this, but I need your lines, buddies.
Voice actors, if you were listening to this, let's go. Come on.
I'm not naming names and I'm not naming you because you've given me all the lines I needed, but there's other good job. There's other people that I'm still waiting on. Well, by the time this airs, maybe not. We'll see.
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not. But we have, you were talking earlier about Tales from an Old Man. We have somewhat of something connected to that coming. I'm not saying more because I'm going to get sniper shot.
This is going to be just a black bar over here.
Yeah.
It's just all going to be a beep.
Yep. And I have a story that I wrote that I'm also producing from start to finish that I've just decided to produce because I wanted to. So I'm going to give it to you for free. Like the rest of Baseline Feed is, except for patrons, if you want to help us out. I'm so subtle, aren't I?
Join the Patreon.
Exactly.
CM, thanks so much for the time and for your friendship and your guidance. I appreciate it very much. And again, folks, I'll have some links down below in the description. Go support Baseline Feed. CM, thanks so much. We'll talk to you
so much. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, folks, there you have it. My chat with CM Peters from Baseline Feed. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Big shout outs again to CM for being a wonderful guest and also a wonderful friend. I appreciate you very much. Be sure to go check out Baseline Feed. Like I said in the intro, they currently are in their preseason. Near the end of this month, they're going to launch their season 3. It's going to be freaking stellar. Your boys in a few episodes, one of which I'm super excited for you guys to hear because I'm super nervous because I'm the lead narrator on it. So it's very exciting. And also I think the story is just amazing. I fell in love with the story and the character that I play. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Go check out Baseline Feed. And again, big shout outs to CM. Go check out her work as well as an author. She's a fantastic author and writer. And you can hear some of her work as well on Baseline Feed. Before we go here today, I want to give a humongous shout out to the people who help make this show possible. You, of course, listening, I appreciate you very much. But I am, of course, referring to my Patreon supporters, my hotheads. We have Ronan Komori from Baseline Feed, Wolf Delta Pi from Baseline Feed, also known as Mo and then Tanner. We have actor extraordinaire Eric Fones, the legendary Carver. We have Mike Quintero from Shutter Radio. Look at that, CM Peters. Wow, I hear she's cool. We have Jason Reese from Jaybird Digital Arts. All of the logos, banners, and social media stuff you see for the Hotter Show is done by Jason Reese from Jaybird Digital Arts. So go check him out today. www.jaybirddigitalarts.com if you need any kind of graphic work done, or if you need a t-shirt or anything at all like that, or even some custom art done. Reach out to Jason Reese. He is the man. He'll get you hooked up. We have the indirect co-creators of the Hotter Show, Terry and Janet Hotter. That's right, folks. My parents are patrons. We have OG producer of the Hotter Show, Mr. Brandon Bowden from Bowden Voice. We have Neil Skrupa from Neurotic Voice. And last but not least, we have Mr. Ian Hall. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. I seriously appreciate it. If you would like to become a patron and get access to my exclusive Patreon show, Tapes Trepidation, which is a horror narration podcast, be sure to check out www.patreon.com/The Hotter Show. And we have lots of other cool stuff coming for the Patreon. Be sure to check out The Hotter Show on any social media platforms. We are The Hotter Show, HODDER, just like the spelling of this podcast. And if you are so inclined and you would like to join my Discord, let me know. I'll send you a link. Or go on to linktr.ee/The Hotter Show, and you will find a link on there to all the social media stuff, as well as all the platforms for The Hotter Show, but also for the Discord. We have a lot of fun over there, so come hang. Always a good time over on the Discord. You'll even see CM there, and you'll see me there, as well as a cast of other wonderful characters we have over there on the Hotter Show Discord. With that, we're ready to sign off here today. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in, and I will catch you next time right here on the Hotter Show. Take it easy, guys.